All right, hello once again, Jeff Scott from Jeff Teaches Programming. And I've got, for lack of better words, kind of a good news, bad news situation. The good news is my program now seems to completely work. The bad news is I made a lot of changes and didn't record while I was making those changes. All right, so what I'm going to try to do is run the program and then go over all the files and ideally talk about the changes that I made, not miss anything, or at least not too much of anything. So the first thing I want to do is I want to come in here and I want to remove the database. I want to start with a brand new empty database. So I'm going to delete what we have here. Hopefully it'll let me remove it. Okay, it's gone. Oh, crud. Well, let me try it again. All right, there's nothing there. For some reason, one of the mistakes that I had was I was referring to the table in the database sometimes as BMI database, and sometimes I was referring to it as BMI person. So I had some errors doing even stuff like that. So you can see that this is now gone. Again, I will come in here where databases are, and I'm just going to refresh. So you can see there is nothing in here called BMI database 02. Now I'm going to come over where my migrations are, and I'm going to delete that folder as well. I don't have to do that, but I'm going to. All right, so now I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to recreate the database by going into the NuGet Package Manager console. Lift that up a bit. All right, and add migration, initial create, so that should come back in here and re-add. Let's close as much of this as possible here so you can kind of see what's going on. So let's see. In fact, let's do this. There we go. Open up this. So you can see there's a data folder, a forms folder, and a models folder. But after I click my add migration initial create, there should be a migrations folder in there when we get done with that. It says that it succeeded. And there's our migrations folder. All right, this is what's what it's doing in there. All right, it's basically creating the database and the table for me. Now, if I come back into here and I right mouse click and I refresh, there is no BMI database 02 yet, because to do that I have to type in the other command, which is update-database. That says it succeeded. Doesn't really change much of anything over here, but it applies that migration. Now notice that when I come in here and when I refresh, there is BMI database 02. And it has in it a person table. And you'll notice that if we look at it, we look at the designer, this is what's in there. Again, I'm not sure why it's still got that 53 there and why this says max, but and why that says 7. But it appears to work okay. Okay, so we've got a person ID, a first name, last name, height, weight, BMI, BMI status, and date created. Now I'm going to close this, and I'm going to say in here I want to view the data. And there isn't any because we just created it. All right, so what we're going to do is run the program and ideally at least create some data. But before we do that, I'm going to run this. And I put some stuff in here, and this is one of the first things I'll show you. If I click read persons, it comes up and it says better. I'm not sure why it's doing this, but oh, it looks like it might be giving me an error here. Let's see if it does. It's giving me an error right there. System invalid operation. Wow. Okay, well, I'm going to have to fix that. That's pretty obvious, but let's see if we can do this first. I'm going to look at the other stuff that's in there. Now that's wrong. Okay, so I'll have to fix that. But if I go to update person, Oh my goodness gracious. And this worked just fine before. But it's okay. It really and truly is okay. Same thing. I'm getting the error in the same place in my get people. All right. And again, it's okay. We're going to fix this. I was hoping this would be the last lecture and I could start on my next thing in here, but we'll see. The delete, I'm going to get the same error because it is erroneous. So it's still in get people. All right. So it's giving me the error right here, or it will eventually. There it is. In fact, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this, make this a little smaller. And this is how I debug this. Do a print screen. Go into Paint. Paste that in. And then I'm going to start Googling it, for lack of better words, in just a minute. But let's see if I can get this to work. I don't know if it'll work or not, but this is what I want to show you. So I'm going to go to Create Person. I'll put myself in there. All right. I might get, okay, it says I'm obese. Okay, whatever. So I'm going to return back to the main form here. Then I'm going to go back into my database. So I'm going to go back to databases and I'm going to refresh. So now when I go to DBO person and I view the data, it is not putting it in there. Wow. Well, let me at least show you in here what I did. I guess I'll need to make 2 more, or at least 1 more video. All right. So let's go in. Let's just take this from the top. Okay. Like I said, it worked just fine yesterday, but okay, whatever. So in data, I've got my context. One of the things I had to change was this line. I had to add options enable retry on failure. It was timing out for some reason. And when I looked at that and I went out, one of the things that was suggested was to put this in, and it seemed to work better with that in there. That's the only thing that's been changed in this file. Now it does appear I could get rid of a lot of this stuff because it's grayed out, but I'm just going to leave it in there. And again, as you see, I tried to come in and add comments, and we went over this in earlier lectures to show you what's going on here. So there's that file. Let's just jump next under models, and we'll go to BMI person. All right. Now, I believe originally these might have just been getters. I honestly don't remember if they were getters or get sets. In fact, they probably were get sets. But this ended up being a big thing in here because in some of the code that I had, this stuff was put in as read-only. And then when I tried to change something and get the BMI and the BMI status updated, it wasn't working. All right, so I think that actually was okay the way it was. The app.config, I didn't have to change anything in here. Again, a key component is what you're going to be calling your database. Those two have to match. All right, we've talked about that before. All right, let's quickly look at that migration. And there's 2 things in here. All right, there's what's called initial create and model snapshot. That one I've never even touched, so I'm not going to do anything with that one. But this initial create, this is when I ran those 2 commands, the add migration, did this, then the update database put it in basically. So this said we were going to create in here the stuff that you see right there. An ID, a first name, a last name, a height, a weight, etc. So that's that stuff. All right, let's close that as well. Now, I want to go through each one of the forms, but before I do that, and I will, all right, I will. But before we do that, I want to go through what's in the BMI library. Remember, I created a BMI library 01, so my BMIEFCore01 would work okay. All right. Now, in the BMI library, there's a lot of stuff in here, and there's stuff in here that's not even being used anymore, but I just left it alone. I don't need this SQL person repository, etc. I don't even need a lot of these things that are in here, but I want to show you what has changed. All right, starting here at BMI abstract, I had to put in an empty constructor, a constructor with nothing in it, and another constructor with no parameters in it. And neither one of them do anything, but I was getting errors. It said it wanted these constructors in there, so I put them in, even though they're not doing anything, and it appeared to solve my problems that I had. The calculator, nothing changed in here, but again, this is where we calculate the BMI. I did change it to, this used to just say, it said return this. And I changed it to set it and then round it to 2 decimal places because it looks nicer that way. The status hasn't been touched. The BMI concrete, same kind of thing as what we had earlier. Remember, since this is basically, it is a child of BMI abstract, it needs this same stuff, but it says, hey, the first name, last name, height, weight, BMI, and BMI status. Since it's got a base there, that means it's going to be handled by the parent, by BMI abstract. And again, I had to put an empty one in here as well. Now, why I needed this in here again and again here, I don't know. Again, a lot of this is duplicative. And I really should have come in here and said this. I should say double BMI equals, and just trust me for a second here. Oh, I guess I didn't copy all of them. Okay. And then return math.round BMI 2. That'll return the BMI to 2 decimal places. All right. And why that's in there twice, I'm not even sure. All right. This EF person repository had a few changes in it as well. This add, I had to tweak it. I had to play with stuff. All right. I went and tried a lot of things because it wasn't working. The add was not working. Okay. One of the things I had to put in was this, which means only go on and do this if the database has indeed been created. So if there was no database, it should fail right there. This is where I'm having problems right now. Not sure why. But we come in, we create the context by creating a new BMI DB context, and then we're attempting to come in here and return all this stuff. All right, I will look at that as soon as I'm done and see if I can fix it. All right, this was the update. We create the context. I had to do a people.find by ID because you want to be able to make sure you're updating the right one. If it couldn't find anything, just return. Otherwise, do the update and save the changes. For the delete, same kind of thing. Create a context, find it by ID. If you couldn't, return. All right, then remove that particular record. Now, this was designed to delete to remove an individual record. This clear, which I don't even think I'm using anymore, is designed to remove all records. All right, we've got that is empty, as it says. It sees if any records exist or not. This map to entity was a helper method that was put in there, as it says. It's going to convert the iPerson into a person entity. All right, the database model itself. And again, you'll notice the math.round in here. Okay, that's it for that particular file. This was not touched. The iPerson, you'll see Again, I had to make these getters and setters because they didn't work otherwise. All right. The iPerson repository. I don't think anything was changed in there. The person.cs, nothing was changed in there other than what I told you before. In fact, I don't think anything was changed in there. Person abstract, that's fine. Person concrete, those are all fine. Because we have the BMI ones. I probably could just get rid of all these. Person repository, I don't think is being used. Repository concrete and SQL, those aren't even being used. So let's just close all this stuff and take a look at the forms. Now, when I'm done looking at the form, for lack of better words, I guess I'm a little bit embarrassed because this worked just fine when I tried it yesterday. Why it's not working now, way beyond me. So I'm going to close everything that is in the BMI library, and I'm going to open up my forms folder, and we're going to look at each one of these 5 forms. Here's the first one, which is just our startup form. I did change it around. I think I had shown you this earlier, but in case I had not, it'll come up in just a second. It used to have just the create person and the exit, but this is these are the CRUD operations. C for create, R for read, U for update, D for delete. All right, and if we look at the code for that, I changed what was written in there a little bit. It had said that I got this information from a certain site. Now I just say weight is in pounds and height is in inches. Okay. That just brought up the individual forms. So there's not really a whole heck of a lot in this one. All right. Then this was the create. I called it FM. I didn't change the name. It was originally when we had just one form in here with the splash screen. It was just FRM BMI stats. So I left that name in here. All right. If we look at the code, again, I want to concentrate on what has changed. And I believe if any, you can see that this is commented out. And I even put in there temporary test fix. Oh, maybe that was why. I should have removed this. Okay, so let's see. I don't know if that'll fix anything or not, but we're going to look at it in just a minute. So I'm going to uncomment that, and I'm going to remove all of this. Where I made some changes too in these was in the load routine of these forms. Not a lot in here. Okay. All right. Next, since that's the C in CRUD, let's look at the R for read. Now this button right here, as it says, it's a non-working dummy button. I left it in there. What I could have easily done is just remove that, put this in the middle, or just removed it, period, but I didn't. All right. So we create a repository. In the load, this is a little bit different, but I want to go over what's in here. Notice we're telling it to automatically generate columns. We're setting read only to true because this is read. Allow the user to add rows is set to false. All right. And it's set to false because this is read only, but you can select an entire row. Then just list it out. This is what was added in everything but the create. So into the read, into the update, and the delete. We created a repo, get people, put it to list. All right. And we said if the people.count is 0, there are no records in the database. So we closed it and went back to our first screen. Otherwise, we don't need an else here, because if there's a return there, we just and might have had an error because of this too. One thing I had to do, because what happens is it'll go to return to start screen, then it'll jump back here again. So I should just put a return right there. All right. All right, so that's the read or CRUD, the CR so far. Here's the update. And again, you'll notice that button is operational. All right. So if we look, this is going to have some things that are the same as before. Some are different, of course, because it's a different operation. And again, not a whole lot new in here until we get down to the load event. All right. Just like we had before, we check, and if it's empty, I'm going to put another return statement here. All right. Otherwise, as we auto-generate the columns, we set it to cell select. It was set to row select before, which is why I could not select an individual column. All right. We only want to be able to allow a row at a time, so multi-select is false. This was new. We're basically making sure that the data grid view is going to hold what it's supposed to hold. We did this before. We locked the read-only columns, and here we're attaching event handlers. Why I've got those warnings, I'm not positive. I didn't do any more to try to get that. Now I had to lock read-only columns. All right. And again, if it's empty, we don't want to do anything. But if it's not empty, we're setting the BMI status, and person ID to read only to true. All right. As I said, I use constants here to try to keep it in line with what we did earlier in the program. All right. This has changed a little bit. It says get the name of the column that you're entering. The only thing we're really checking here is for height and weight. So we check to see whether it's height or weight. If for some reason we didn't put an integer value in there, all right, it's illegal. There's other ways we could have done this also. But if we made it down here as it says, we did put an integer in, but now we have to do a range check. So if it's height, if it's out of range, height must be an integer between those values. We cancel it, and we're basically done here. Same thing with weight. All right. Then we've got this cell end edit. And what we're doing in here, as it says, we want to retrieve the current row's bound object. If there is one, if there's not, we're just going to return. Get the name of the column the user is currently editing. Again, if it's height or if it's weight, we have to make sure if it's BMI that we're recalculating the BMI and we're recalculating the BMI status, then we refresh. Here, if we had an invalid row index, we're just returning. Otherwise, we're saying we're done. Notice this is the row validated, so validated, which means it has already been validated. All right, so yeah, that's pretty much it for the update. Save that, and then let's do the delete. All right, now there's two ways that you could delete in here, the way that this is set up. If you move off the field you're currently changing, it'll automatically rewrite it. Otherwise, you can also click the delete button. So both of those work. All right. Again, in the load event, doing a lot of what we've been doing. Allow you to select a row at a time. Setting up your people. Again, I'm going to come in here and try to put in a return. All right. And there was some stuff in here. I was like, if let's say I wanted to delete me, it wasn't saying this. I had parentheses in here and it was all screwed up. So that should be fixed now as well. Now, the only thing I can think of, I'm wondering, since I made that change, if it works now. And if it doesn't, this will be the end of this video, which is already getting long enough. So let's create a person, see if we can get it to work. I'll put in me. All right, let's return. Let's come back here and see if it did anything, and it may not have. Let's refresh the database. All right, let's go back to here. We'll view the data, and it still isn't showing anything. So something is still hosted here. I don't know what it is, but something is still hosted. All right. And my guess is I'm going to get the same errors that I got before, but I'm going to try it again anyway, just for the heck of it. So let's close all this. And I want to see if I do my read and my update and my delete, if I'm getting the errors on that one. Oh, see, there it is. They have both been put in there. And here's the problem. Like I said, for some reason, it's making two different copies of the database. All right, so this is the right copy. You can see there, I'm in there twice. Now, let's see if I can change this. Instead of me, let's put in my brother. All right, and let's say he's smaller than I am, and he weighs less. Well, to be honest with you, I shouldn't be changing it in here. So let's just remove that. Let's go back to the program. Okay, return. Let's see if we can update. Well, that looks good. It did actually do the update. Okay. All right. And let's return again. Let's delete. Let's see if I can delete me. Delete Jeff Scott. Yes, and I'm gone. All right, so I guess it was working all that time. Now I want to see one last thing, and that is I'm going to delete. Now there's no records in there. I think you can all agree with that. I'm going to return. Now I'm going to try to read persons. There are no records in the database. That's exactly what it should be doing. Same thing with update. There are no records. And delete, there are no records. So as far as I can tell, everything, and I mean everything here, is now working. So there's two things I want to mention, then we'll be finished with this. First of all, this copy, I'm going to get rid of it. And I'm going to redo it. So save all. I'm just going to even close Visual Studio for right now. All right, and I'm going to make a copy of this again. Oh, I don't want it. I don't want it to do any. It's doing updates again. Good gravy. This is doing updates all the time. So copy. Paste. So I believe at least I'm finished with everything for this one. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to go back to the other program that we had, which is the payroll program. And I'm not going to do that as an SQL program and then have it iterate over to an EFCore. I'm going to do EFCore right away with it. All right. So I'll be back with that. At least should be back with that shortly, and I'll see you then.